I want to now bring in this live telecast a journalist joining me from Canada. He's the senior correspondent at the National Telegraph, Wyatt Claypool, and Wyatt has been writing extensively on what Canadian citizens, residents, and clearly the world also is reacting to amid the showdown. Wyatt, thank you for joining me. So my first question is, what should one make of this statement after first saying allegations, now stating Canada wants good ties with India? The question is, can there be an end to this diplomatic war after what has been started in the Parliament in Canada? Wyatt.
Well, 100% what Justin Trudeau has just done is a massive climb down from his previous position of wanting to go after India. Really what he's basically guaranteeing that we're never going to see the evidence behind the credible allegations that he was ballyhooing in Parliament. He could still have them. Who knows? I can never decisively say what he has and what he doesn't. Maybe he had evidence that he wasn't allowed to release because his Five Eyes partners didn't give him permission, and they're a little bit mad at him for, trying to push an allegation with evidence that he didn't have access to. But what this probably is just Justin Trudeau hearing back from community leaders in Canada and finding out that Indian Canadians are not liking this stupid fight he's picking with India. And that's Hindu Canadians, that's Sikh Canadians, that's Christian Indian Canadians. They don't like the fact that Justin Trudeau is picking this dumb fight with India over effectively defending an extremist movement on Canadian soil and treating them as extra special citizens.
Do you think it's also because of the allegations that he's made that he's confusing separatists and extremists, and for India clearly a designated terrorist too, with the larger Sikh community? Because the Sikhs have often come up and said they do not even attach themselves to this Khalistani project. But what Canada is looking like to the wider world right now, that it is willing to give citizenship, shelter to anyone who comes, even if India was constantly reminding to the Canadian government, these are extremists, these are gangsters and criminals, do not give them shelter, because eventually, Wyatt, will this not hamper or cause trouble to Canada?
That's exactly why Justin Trudeau is probably losing a lot of Sikh Canadian voters, because of the disgusting implication that somehow Sikh Canadians are synonymous with Khalistanis. Like I've said multiple times before, that's like saying that Catholic Canadians are synonymous with people who support the IRA, or Quebec Canadians, or Quebec people who support more Quebec nationalist parties being supportive of the FLQ, a terrorist Quebec separatist movement. Obviously, that was just a very foolish thing for Justin Trudeau to do, but he's controlled by many members of his caucus and Jagmeet Singh, who have basically, I think, tricked him into believing that the Khalistani movement is far more representative of the overall Sikh community than it really is. And this happens all the time in Canada with extremist movements and foreign government front groups, is that you get people from the Chinese Communist Party who pretend that all Chinese voters are very pro-Beijing. You have this with Islamist front groups as well and other sorts of fringe separatist groups.
You know, Wyatt, I have to appreciate, because you've been not writing only extensively at an individual level, but also via the National Telegraph, because it is journalists like you who are also exposing it. And it's not just NDP's Jagmeet Singh, but within the Canadian government, there is something that's brewing. There are, whether it's members of parliament, there are senior politicians who are pushing the Khalistani project. And more than a project, it's going to become a Khalistani problem that Canada may find difficult to deal with, because on Indian soil, Indian agencies are ensuring that the gangster criminal nexus is broken. But in Canada, it looks like there is complete inaction on this.
Well, the thing is too, it's just so silly that we have people in government who actually are trying to push this sort of Khalistani movement and narrative while they're in Canada. That would be as silly as having Quebec Canadians move to India and trying to make it a big issue in Indian politics that Quebec should separate from Canada and become its own country. It has nothing to do with our country, and anyone who obviously moves to Canada wants to talk about Canadian domestic issues and foreign policy issues when it comes to Canada's elections, yet we're having our politics effectively hijacked with people who want to make Canada a home base for their stupid foreign pet projects.
And my final question to you, Wyatt, is our colleague is also in Canada right now, all the way from Delhi to Surrey right now, and she's been sending us ground reports. There are places of worship where Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed. It still continues to host these banners and posters of Khalistan, of threats to Indian diplomats. There are areas, and this is not about the Sikh community. These are criminal gangsters who have taken over the clout in places of worship which are being misused. They are pushing out the Khalistan extremist project. They are threatening Indian diplomats from these places of worship. Shouldn't this be something that the Canadian agencies must be pursuing, ensuring it does not happen against a friendly nation, at least once a friendly nation, rather than target India over it, do something on their own soil?
Well, I would say that our CSIS agents, our Canadian intelligence agents, are very good at their job, and they usually are men and women of integrity. And I think on this particular issue, why these certain like fringe temples are allowed to host these banners calling for the deaths of Indian government officials and whatnot is because a lot of these CSIS agents want to keep their jobs. They know if they push this line too far that they could end up on unemployment pretty fast. And the thing is with the media in Canada, the media is really one of the big issues is that when we saw about, 4 or 5 days ago, one of the temples taking down their posters and their billboards calling for violence, is that they knew that one temple knew that if they take down this messaging from their temple, the media is going to basically declare the problem solved and walk away, even though you could probably find a dozen more fringe temples like that needs to clean up their act and need to be called out. But the media doesn't really want to pursue this line because they know it's bad for Justin Trudeau, and much of the media in Canada is funded by the government.
Right. I appreciate you joining us. Wyatt Claypool, he's a journalist with the National Telegraph in Canada, has been reporting extensively about the problem that really there is and about the India-Canada showdown as well. Thank you so much for joining Wyatt to India Today's live telecast.